Who knows?
We're here with you.
You're here with me, and I am here, and wow, are we here? We are this month. It's the 15th anniversary month. If anybody hasn't heard me talk about it, I apologize, but you're still going to hear more about it. It's our 15th anniversary week, and so I decided let's see if we can just spread the fun of the spoiler room across multiple channels. So we are multicasting tonight, folks, for as long as the system lets me. Uh, on, so anybody out there watching on the Facebook group, on the YouTube, and on the Twitter, welcome to the spoiler room. I am your host, Mark the Movie Man. So glad you could join us today by venturing down the stairs, pulling up a chair, and getting a drink and sharing it with us as we talk movie spoilers. And we are kicking off our Saw is Family Month, or excuse me, hold on, let me wait. The Saw is Family. No, my worst Vin Diesel. Yes, the whole month it is going to be chainsaw movies. We're doing Texas Chainsaw 1, 2, 3, and then for giggles, we're doing Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers at the end of the month. Don't. If you ever want a picture of how my brain works, there you go, folks. I came up with that idea like that, and we went with it. And tonight, I have a wonderful crew to talk about probably one of my favorite horror films, and whether or not it's their favorite horror film, we'll find out tonight. We're talking Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974. And with me tonight, first up, she is back with us. Hello, Angelique. Welcome back to the spoiler room once again.
Hello.
So glad you could be with us. How does it feel to be multicasting?
It tingles a little, but
There's some tingling feeling, but it's still early, so we'll
yeah,
see what happens.
I haven't lost a thumb yet, so we're good.
We're good. Well, the fourth is over though, so we should be all right. No,
Well, we're dealing with chainsaws now, though.
we are dealing with chainsaws, which is even more deadly. And with me as well, he is once again with us in the spoiler room. We've been doing this consistently for nearly a year and a half now, my friend.
That's
It is
bonkers.
that is bonkers. And speaking of bonkers, Mr. Ian Simmons kicking the seat. Hello, Ian. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. This is the second time in a month I'm going to talk about this movie, and I am raring to go because, yes, this is one of my favorite horror movies.
That's great to hear. That makes me happy to hear that because that will make this conversation probably go a lot better. No, just kidding.
I hate Texas Chainsaw. Toby Hooper's a hack.
Oh, well, it's going to get bloody, folks. Angelique, you can be referee, and let's
Well,
go.
this is my all-time favorite movie. It's not my favorite horror movie.
Wow.
It's not my favorite comedy. It is my favorite movie. Period.
Oh, well, you lead with that. We got to hear. So, do you remember the first time you saw this movie?
Yes. I was much too young, but it scarred me in the best way. Put it this way, when I saw this, Night Court was still on the air,
Yeah.
and I was like, that's Dan.
The voice,
I know
yeah.
that voice.
Yeah.
I know that voice. It's Dan. Yeah, it's really wild. I didn't really recognize it too much till years later when I looked up the credits and I'm like, holy crap, that's. And it was really cool that they got him to do the voiceover for the the remakes. They got him actually back. I thought that was kind of cool that they got Mr. Larroquette back for that. But do you remember, Ian, when you first saw TCM?
This is, I imagine this is probably a story for all of us, but, again, like Angelique said, I saw this when I was way too young. I don't remember exactly when it was. I was probably 9 or 10. I think by that point, Texas Chainsaw 2 was probably at the video store, and I probably saw the standee and everything. I was like, what's
Right.
that about? And so they weren't going to let me watch the second one without seeing the first one. So I think I watched it with my dad, and
It's integral to the plot.
well, yeah, kind of.
Yeah, it
no,
is.
but I didn't quite. It didn't freak me out. It didn't
Sure.
scare me. I just remember it being really weird and kind of uncomfortable because this is not like a conventional horror movie.
No.
Yeah, and even I don't know. I love the second one. I love the first one, but there's something that, and they're both so different in their own way. It's almost hard to describe like what it is about them. I think that's why the first one is such a groundbreaking movie. It's not quite a slasher. It just feels so grimy and real that you could almost feel like it was based on a true story.
Yeah, well, it's that look, it's that documentary type look to it, I think, that does it, because it is low budget. And I've said that before. I think that's kind of the impact, the aesthetic that it was shot on. I think was one of those that helped add to its effect. I too was too young to watch this film when it came out. It's kind of the story of us Gen Xers, folks. Is our parents let us watch movies when we were way too young for it. So and I dug it. I dug it quite a bit. I thought it was wild. I'm like, holy crap! It probably first indie film you could consider, and opened up the way for other, the darker slasher type films. I think in a lot of ways. So for me, it had an impact. I mean, I loved it, and I used to watch it quite a bit. I watched it probably the most out of any of the Chainsaw movies. It's probably the one I've watched the most, and I enjoy it for its spirit, what he did with what little he had, and maybe it's also the Wisconsin tie because Ed Gein.
Yeah.
So so there is that as well. So yeah, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Who wants to? Let's see. Angelique, why don't you give the synopsis of Texas Chainsaw Massacre for those two people out there who may not know what it's about?
It's gonna have spoilers, y'all. So
It's the spoiler room. The movie's only 47 years old.
yeah, yeah. But we do have these youngins coming up, so if they're listening, stop it right now, or you're gonna be spoiled. So the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is the story of Sally Hardesty and her friends and her asshole brother Franklin, and we'll get into that, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
Who are headed to check on their granddad's, is it? Yeah, their granddad's place in who knows where, Texas.
Texas. Just middle of nowhere, Texas.
Yeah. And the film opens showing the desecration of a graveyard. And it's not just like, oh, somebody dug up something. No, this is foul. Like, there's bits and yuck all over the place. So they're coming to make sure that their family's graves haven't been messed with. And they're going out to the old family house. Along the way to pick up a hitchhiker. Don't pick up hitchhikers is the moral of the entire movie.
Yeah.
They pick up a hitchhiker and it goes way sideways real quick. Then they go over to their granddad's house and it's all dilapidated and fallen and it's hot as crap. You can tell these people are miserable. And a couple of them want to go swimming in the old swimming hole, which is gone.
Which is gone. I love that.
All dried up, yeah.
Yeah, it's gone. So they see a house close to the swimming hole and they decide to break in and disturb this family. Again, guys, breaking and entering is a crime and punishable by
many things.
That old Texas justice, yeah.
Yeah, by a mallet to the brain and a chainsaw to the business. So, but basically, this home is the house of the Sawyer family, whom the hitchhiker is a member of, and it's a family of folks who used to work at the stockyards and the slaughterhouse, and of course, the slaughterhouse stockyards shut down. They're in the middle of economic just drought, and they're in a food desert. So, what do you do?
Get a little hungry. You get a little hungry.
What do you do? Meat's meat.
That's right. Best damn barbecue this side of the Pecos.
Hell yeah! So you can pretty much surmise what happens there. Everybody gets picked off, except for our heroine, the
Yes.
very first of the final girls, Sally.
Yeah. Yeah, because this was before Halloween, so
Yes, the queen, perfect goddess Sally Hardesty in her purple tank top and what used to be white bell bottoms. She gets hit in the head, put in a burlap sack, tortured with a broom, hit with a meat mallet, her fingers sliced up, sucked on by a almost zombie. She jumps out of a window and runs away, gets caught again, jumps out of another window,
Yep.
runs like hell from Leatherface to a semi truck. The guy almost turns it over.
Yeah.
All the while, she's screaming. Leatherface is swinging that chainsaw like nobody's damn business. Kills the trucker, unfortunately. But then a regular ass pickup truck is coming down the road. Wasn't gonna slow down, but
No.
Sally made it. She jumps in the back of the truck, escapes, laughing. Her sanity gone.
Yeah.
Yet, is it?
Well said. Well said. Yeah, I love this movie. I'm watching it again. I watched it with my my oldest. He turned 21 today at the time of this recording.
Woo!
Oh,
So-
happy birthday!
So my oldest, and he sat down, and over the past 5 years, as people have heard me mention before, he's grown, and not I wouldn't say affection, but he's grown to enjoy and wanting to watch horror and consume horror, which was just a switch from when he was a kid. And me, as being a horror dad, I'm digging it. I'm like, hey, you want to watch this? Yeah, okay. I'm like, okay, cool. So we sit down and watch this, and he's a different generation, and I always like to get his perspective, especially for a film like this. And he said that it was okay, but he made the mention of, he's like, they broke into the guy's house. He's like, he's like, they broke into his house. So, they were just defending themselves. I mean, eminent domain,
Well, in this part of Texas, it's known as the stand your ground beef law.
There you go.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
It is a beautiful thing. But it was interesting to hear his perspective, because he said, he knew, he could tell it was kind of, going to pick up at the end. He figured that's the way it was going to play out. And I'm like, I was trying not to say anything or even react like I normally do when I watch a movie, and I've watched a movie and I'm sitting with someone who hasn't watched before. The one thing, well, you guys, I'm sure, one thing I'm trying not to do is,
Yeah.
yeah. And the other one I'm trying not to do is make little noises like, oh, yeah,
You're gonna miss it. You're gonna miss it.
But I mean, he dug it, but it's older, and he said, well, the thing is, you see a lot of this now. And I'm like, yeah, but this was like the first, or pretty much the first slasher. I mean, everybody talks about Halloween and Jason, but if you look at even those two films, you could see bits and pieces they borrowed from Texas Chainsaw. I mean,
And Texas Chainsaw it's just nasty.
it is.
I mean, like that scene at the end where Leatherface, when he gets hit in the head with a wrench and he falls down and the chainsaw cuts through his leg, it looks like an actual chainsaw cutting through someone's leg. It's not like an effect. It's like you see the fabric burn away and little chunks of like burning fat bubbling up underneath the blade.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's hard to watch. And it's funny. I remember there was another tie to this movie for me. It was 1986. I don't remember if I had seen the movie like at this point, but it was right around that, like I said, 9 or 10. the movie Summer School with Mark Harmon. Did you guys ever see that?
Yeah,
I loved that. I watched that quite a bit.
Yeah, it was always on TV, and I loved that movie. And the two characters, Chainsaw and Dave, they were obsessed with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and they actually showed Mark Harmon let them show it in his class. And it's funny because when Leatherface, I think when he bursts out of the house with a chainsaw at the end, they're sitting there going, Leatherface, 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 Leatherface. They're chanting his name. And so I was like, what is this movie? And I think it was right around that time that I went to the video store and saw the standee and all that. And because my parents would let me watch Summer School. There's something going on in my house. I don't know. They let me watch all sorts of horrible things.
That was all our parents. I'm saying that was a trend. That's a running joke of everyone I talked to from the 80s. Like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have watched that at that age, but you know.
I was talking earlier today about Revenge of the Nerds, and it occurred to me that I would have been watching that movie when I was 8 years old.
Yeah, that one. Watching it now is kind of like.
We were talking about that, and the thing is, like, it's not just. It wasn't a situation where my dad would be like, "Hey, don't tell your mom we watched this together." This is like family dinner night.
Yeah.
Downstairs watching Revenge of the Nerds.
Police Academy.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Police Academy was another one that we ended up watching together, and your parents never said anything. I mean, you know, it was like material came up like that. Well, those 80s comedies, you know, people talk about how formulaic horror is. Let me tell you about 80s comedies, even the big ones. The very popular ones, especially in the mid-80s, you had to have nudity. You had to have all your stereotypes played like caricatures. And the humor was definitely that would not land today. But landing today in Texas Chainsaw, one of the things he pointed out, which is something, it's one of those things where I love the movie, and this was like the first time for a very long time I watched down and kind of turn on the critical eye, you know, pay attention to a few more things rather than just digging it. And well, you guys, you both know you watch a movie a little differently when you have to actually do a little critiquing versus just grabbing a drink and go, okay, let's watch this and enjoy it. He mentioned just how much foreshadowing is in this film. And I'm like, holy crap, you're right. From when they meet, you know, the hitchhiker to them talking about the Zodiac, you know, and the retrograde, which it's like Saturn's in retrograde, to Angelique. I don't know if you've watched this probably many times. The radio broadcast.
Yeah.
Blew my mind.
They're telling you exactly what's happening. There are people going missing. There are murders. Don't go to this town. Just keep driving.
Well, it's not only that, but global events too.
Yeah.
It's not just in Texas.
In Vietnam.
Everything on that radio is negative.
Well, I think that's sort of the, you know, one of the bits of subtext is the sort of invincibility of youth. Like, these are just, you know, kind of hippie kids bumming around. They're not, you know, fighting in the war or anything. They're just carefree going across America. They don't have to pay attention to anything, even though all the warning signs are flashing right at their heads. They're like, yeah, whatever, it's fine.
Yeah, Grandpa wasn't dug up, so we're okay, Franklin. Never mind the grotesque, statuesque thing that was made from body parts sitting on a post at the graveyard. No.
Hey, I mean, I don't know what art is, but I know it when I see it.
And that thing was definitely art.
It was something. And also, like, when they get to the graveyard, there's that weird, you know, old drunk guy just like rolling around on the ground. I'm like, what is this place? This is, just get in the van and go home.
Just go home. Yeah, best barbecue in town, though. Yeah. Which, again, when you see the gas station guy, I was watching it today, and again with the critical eye, I'm like, holy crap, this is where, because a lot of people say, you know, and no offense to the movie at all, it's still one of the pioneers in slasher films, but Friday the 13th, the old warning guy at the gas station, but I'm like, actually was done in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now,
Yep.
granted, the bad guy was the one doing the warning, but
I'm sorry. He's giving you a chance.
Yeah.
That's the thing. He saw the mark on your car. Y'all might just want to go on, or something bad's going to happen. And I'm hungry.
Well, he's already got the smoker going, so he's got a side of beef in there. Beef was the nickname of the guy that he cut up.
Yeah. He was a linebacker,
And now he's a baby backer.
Baby back, baby back, baby back, baby back, ribs.
Oh yeah. Damn it! Now I'm hungry. I shouldn't be, but
We're talking cannibal movie, and Ian's getting hungry, folks. There you go.
well,
This
something.
movie makes me crave barbecue like nobody's business. I mean, I'll get a pint of barbecue and just sit down with a loaf of bread and watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'm single, guys.
She's available. If you can bring over the cornbread, you two are match made in heaven. So.
There's your new show, the Texas Chainsaw Matchmaker.
There. Oh.
No, the thing that weirded me out watching it this time, and it may have bothered me, but not in a level that I really registered, was Franklin. He gets some barbecue from this gas station, and I think it's when he's looking at the mark, the sausage that's hanging out of his mouth. What? I've never had anything that looks like that in my mouth before.
Cooked sausage?
Was that what that was?
Yeah,
Maybe
it's a homegrown Slim Jim.
But there was like this fat bulbous tumor hanging out of his mouth.
Yeah,
you're gonna have to DM me your address, and I'll make you a care package.
Oh,
this is going to be the Mayo thing all over again.
I love barbecue. It's just when I saw that, I thought, is this Toby Hooper trying to give some kind of like a subtle in joke that's like a human body part or something? Because I'd never seen something that looked like that people were eating.
Yeah, no, I've seen it before. I've never seen someone just keep it in their mouth for so long like a cigar. I mean,
Well, I guess the movie's to show you, Mark.
Chewing it, yeah.
Don't do that again, by the way.
You get a whole different group of people watching, but
that's the Texas Vein Saw Massacre. No, sorry.
I do have 2 porn parodies of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre sitting on my shelf. So
only
Yeah.
2?
What are they named?
Texas Vibrator Massacre.
That one's
Oh wait,
bad.
no, that's the one I have. It's not bad.
Well, that one is better than the other. We watched some porn parodies for Astro Radio Z, our friends over there, which check out their podcast, folks. We used to do once a year. We used to do porn parodies where we would cut them down to just the story bits, so the movies were like 15 minutes long, and then we would talk about them.
Tell me, in one of these Texas Chainsaws, is the killer, is it Rubberface? And is he wearing a mask made of stitched together parts of like broken condoms?
No, but now
I'm gonna have to make that movie.
What did we talk about? It's the internet rule. We just mentioned it. It already
Magnum
happened.
face,
Yes, yeah.
Magnum face. Leatherface. It's funny with the Leatherface character because, especially if you're from Wisconsin and you know the story of Ed Gein, what's disturbing is he actually did that. So seeing it on the screen like that, and especially if you know the background of what influenced this house, that does, I think, add that other level, Ian, like you were talking about, that almost documentary feel for the, because it did happen. I mean, you've got that lamp made, lit up above the dinner table. That's a head. It's literally someone's head with a light bulb in it hanging. And the thing is, Ed Gein had his mom, had the woman who worked at the hardware store that he had killed, put nails in her head, and he made a wall ornament out of her head in Mother's house. So
Have you seen pictures of these crime scenes? Or have you just read about
Yes.
them? Yeah,
no, there's a book. When I was 13, I became fascinated by this story, and I read the case book that they released that has the story leading up to his trial, the transcript from his trial, and crime scene photos.
My God, I made the mistake of looking up. I watched a drama a few years ago. It was really good. I can't remember the name of it, unfortunately, but it was about young, like teenage Jeffrey Dahmer. I think it might have been based on My Friend Dahmer.
My Friend Dahmer is what.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's right. Because I read the graphic novel, and it's very close. It's good. But I went and I looked up the crime scene photos from Jeffrey Dahmer because
Oh no.
it's such a sympathetic portrait of Jeffrey Dahmer as just this really messed up teen that I got so far into the movie. I'm like, could he have been a monster? Oh yeah, he was a monster. Like I'm still haunted by some of the stuff. Even the photos that I saw, like they had, I think to protect the identity of the people in the photos, something like they had like put it like black
The black
X's over the
bars, yeah.
eyes. I'm like, that kind of makes it worse.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm a true crime buff,
Oh,
and from way back myself.
Sure.
Staying in my aunt's house for the summer. I'd come visit my grandparents, and then I'd get passed around the different aunts and uncles. But of course, there wasn't cable because her house is literally still off of a dirt road. It was my great grandparents' house, but she had Reader's Digest condensed books. So I read the Ted Bundy one, and then she had, Alfred Hitchcock magazines and other crime stuff. And reading about Ed Gein, the books I had, I didn't have access to pictures at that time. But when they said, he dressed a woman as a deer, I always thought to myself, I'm like, well, that's not bad. I mean, I've got a deer costume. Then I discovered what that really meant.
Oh,
yeah.
rough.
No, he and yes, this does pertain to Texas Chainsaw. And folks, this is a movie that's been talked many times, so you'll have to excuse our discussion if it's not fully dissecting the film, but it's been dissected many times. But again, the reason I'm only 20 minutes away, and we've got a viewer. Thank you for stopping by, Genma Rocks, on the Twitter broadcast. He mentioned that, yes, Plainfield is only 20 minutes away from where I live.
Oh,
and
cool.
that's where Mr. Ed Gein was. So, yeah, I mean, so it's something in Wisconsin. We grow the real crazies in the Midwest. It's just, it's the winners. Come on. But when I read about that, and then you see Texas Chainsaw, it adds that little extra level because the furniture made out of bones, it's not just them, especially in 74, going for shock value. He did that. The lampshade made out of human skin, he did that. And he made not only a mask, folks, but a bodysuit made from the parts of the females he killed. And in the full moon, he would dress up and dance in the moonlight in his yard in his victim suit.
He also had a belt made of nipples from the different corpses that he desecrated.
When they found him, when they, are we traumatizing you all over again? So maybe that's why I have this extra appreciation for Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because you can see that Toby Hooper, that he pulled directly from those case files.
How many people did Ed Gein kill?
2.
They're not quite
2?
sure.
Possibly 3 if you include his brother. But the only actual murders he committed were the bartender and the hardware store owner.
Yep. Yeah.
So the rest were what? Bodies he dug up or something? Okay, because
he was a grave robber.
Because when you talk about a belt made out of nipples, I'm like, how many bodies is that?
No, he mostly stuck to robbing graves and watching couples make out in graveyards, because back in the day, when you have conservative 50s and 60s, people would go to graveyards to make out and do the nasty.
Is that what they call it, a headstone? Sorry.
Now I want some head cheese. There you go.
No, you really don't.
Ironically, that was
you
the
gotta,
working title of the movie.
That was what?
Head Cheese was the working title of
Oh
Texas
yeah.
Massacre.
Well, because they talk about it, they have that whole discussion because Franklin, who a lot of people have deemed one of the most annoying characters in horror film history, uh, talks extensively about the. And there's foreshadowing there too, though. If you look at it, they're talking about the, clubbing of the cows in the head versus the nail gun that we see in No Country for Old Men. Uh, um, it's before that, so they did the sledgehammer, and he talked about his grandpa. But yeah, the first kill, which is the kill that my son said he appreciated the most because it wasn't flashy, it wasn't really set up. Dude broke into his house. Leatherface comes around the corner, goes, "Hey, you're invading my house." Takes the mallet, whoomp, and hits the guy. No setup, no, not just boom out of no.
That crazy pig scream that he does, and wham, and then the noise that gets me is when he's seizing and his feet are just grrr on that metal. Whoa, God.
And that's why I actually appreciate that scene too, because the twitching, you don't see it that often. I mean, you saw it in The Rock. I just have one question: is that normal? You don't normally see that when someone gets hit in the head right away, the twitching, and the fact that guy sells the twitching too. That actor, he knew. He's like, this is my scene, man. I get killed. I get to be the first kill by Leatherface. He sells it. And it's creepy as fuck, the twitching.
Yeah, and then the punctuation of the slamming of the metal door, and you realize this is not a normal house. Like there's something really weird going on in here.
Yeah, because you don't get to see you don't see any of the furniture or anything before then. Before that, you just see taxidermy stuff, and you're like, okay, this guy really loves his taxidermy. Okay. It's not until she goes in the house looking for her boyfriend after you get the famous butt shot that I think to this day that Michael Bay borrows from. But anyway, she goes in, and that's where she finds all the lovely furniture that they've designed, as well as the chicken in the cage. I love the pet chicken in the cage. So random. I don't. That's what. There's parts of this film that are.
You gotta have eggs.
You do. You do have to have eggs, and then it's. This is my favorite sequence. I know it's earlier in the film, but I think it. If you watch this sequence, it's one of those that sticks with you, and it just sets up the rest of the film, because after he clubs her boyfriend and he tosses him on the table, we don't see that right away. She's looking for him, and then she sees him because he comes out of the metal door and he does that famous grab that everybody says out the door. So then, folks, I'm going to set it up for you, because this is probably one of my favorite kills, and I know it sounds sick, but come on, this is a film, not real life. One of my favorite kills is that Leatherface takes her, puts her on a meat hook, and then while she's still alive on the meat hook, he carves up her boyfriend in front of her with the chainsaw. What's great is I describe it, it sounds more disturbing, and it's actually presented on screen, though, because they're working with a budget, so you don't actually see like you would now, the hook go into her back or whatnot. He cuts away, and suddenly but you've got the impression enough that she's doing it. And then he's cutting up the boyfriend, but we don't see him cutting off actual pieces. It's a far shot, and there's something blocking the camera to where the chainsaw is cutting.
But you know what he's doing.
Exactly. And Angelique, what's one of the things, when you mentioned Texas Chainsaw Massacre, do people say, wow, that's a gory, bloody movie?
Yeah, and I'm like, no, you obviously haven't watched it, because it's honestly and truly not. I mean, the most blood we see is when Sally's getting put through the ringer at the end.
Yeah. Well, and Franklin is the bloodiest kill.
Yeah, because it's a gut shot.
Mm-hmm. And he's got a lot of gut. So. and I guess that's what I appreciate about this film is you mentioned it, and people go, oh, that's so gory and disgusting. I'm like, not really.
Well, it is disgusting, but not for the reasons that they think it is.
Right.
Well, I mean, it comes back to the real horror of what is going on. Like that scene with the hook that you just mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
when Terry McMinn is up there on the hook, she's like reaching back behind herself because she can feel that she has just been hung on a hook, and she's almost in shock, like what? And then there's this horrible thing happening in front of her. It's almost it's worse than if they had just shown, a
Mm-hmm.
chainsaw going through flesh, because it's the real nightmare of, you feel like you're really in that scenario with her.
Yeah, you feel like you're hiding behind that table as all of that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, a lot of the decisions he made was because of budget, but I think this is where it plays in favor of this film. They don't have a whole lot of budget for gore and blood. So what do? You have people being chased in a kitchen that has blood on the walls. And you have that image even subconsciously coming in. So even if you don't have something bloody actually happening in front of you, just catching that in the corner of your eye suddenly sets the stage up to like, wow.
Yeah, just the sheer filth of the environment.
Oh, the filth, all those feathers on the floor when she first falls into the living room.
Yeah, like she needed a tetanus shot anyway.
Well, there's also, towards the end, the dinner scene where they decide to give Grandpa a go with the sledgehammer.
Oh.
The suspense of that. And yeah, Sally does get actually hit on the head, and you see some blood, but it's just the idea, the clang of the hammer every time it misses. You can feel the weight of that, and just imagine how heavy that would be on your head. And when it keeps missing, it's like, Texas Russian roulette. You're like, oh my God, I hope this doesn't happen, but I feel like it's going to happen. Even when she gets hit, it doesn't, knock her out or kill her or anything. So they're like, oh, we got to go again. So we're being put through the ordeal again. I get it is practically PG-13 in the blood and gore it displays, but it's X in terms of the emotional trauma that you're put through the first time you see this movie.
Well, the worst, the most disturbing part, I mean, the dinner table scene, of course, that's pinnacle, but the one that got me the most is when she runs to the gas station for help.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy's like, it's all right, you're gonna be okay. And then he, knocks her out, throws her in that burlap sack. And when he's in the truck and he's just poking her with that broom, oh, that just makes my skin crawl. That is the worst, because now, like, oh crap, there is no safe place here.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, you imagine that you're inside that sack being poked by some maniac. You don't know if that's, if it's a machete or if it's a broom. Like, is something that come through the sack and impale me? Like, what is going on here? The reason I watched this movie last month is because I did an interview with a film critic and a video essayist named Scout Tafoya, who came out with a book called Cinemophagy, which is about the films of Tobe Hooper. We talked quite a bit about Texas Chainsaw, and one thing he pointed out, it was speculation on his part, so I don't think Hooper ever actually addressed it, but Hooper was very much into political themes in his movies, and he maintains that Jim Sydow, who played the old man at the gas station, was purposely kind of accentuated in the hair and the makeup to have this like a Nixonian appearance, which for Texas Chainsaw 2 was sort of morphed. And it's eerie to think that you didn't have to do a whole lot to turn him into almost like a Reagan figure. So it's just a whole idea of this kind of this machine, this conspiracy that's coming down to literally turn the youth, the young generation in, put them through the meat grinder, whether it's the Vietnam War or, what have you.
Yeah, I mean, you could see some of the subtext in there with that. I mean, the other things too, like with the radio reports, like we mentioned earlier, are in there. Commentary on the in a subtle way. You mentioned it, Ian, economy, on how the change in economy and some automation. I know it's a little reaching, I know, but you could draw a line between automation and advancements in production with loss of jobs, which is what may have sent some of this family over the edge, is the fact they didn't work at a job where they could, for lack of a better term, have an outlet for their you know, their impulses, and so they had to turn to humans because, well, they stopped killing cows. You know what I mean? I mean, when they were killing cows, it kind of it satiated that bloodlust so that they didn't have to kill people. But
Well, and that's something that's interesting. I have not seen all of the Texas. Maybe I have seen all the Texas Chainsaw movies. I think they did an origin movie
yeah, they
a
did.
few
Well,
years
they
ago, and
a
I don't
couple,
think.
but
Yeah, I don't know if I watched that, but I wonder because as you bring up, Mark, they weren't. It's not like this is a family of cannibals going back hundreds of years. This is a relatively new development. So, have they tackled that like in one of these origin movies? Like, what was like to say, hey, we're going to make this decision to start eating people, and maybe that drove them crazy.
the the origin story kind of goes back further than that with the child and kind of showing the disturbing, uh, you know, from what I'm remembering it, because I've watched them all, but not all of them really stuck with me. But if I remember correctly, and Angelique, if you've seen any of them, you can correct me. But they kind of go back further to like the childhood of what sparked Leatherface. You know,
Psychopathy runs in the family. I think it's a
right?
inbreeding situation
Mm-hmm.
as
That's what it
well.
was. Yeah.
And his skin disease
Mm-hmm.
makes
Yeah.
having to wear the leather face. But I mean that you can kind of there's not just it's been several years that this family started this.
Hmm.
Well, well, let's not forget. Oh, I'm sorry. You can go ahead.
I was going to say, like, that's kind of disappointing. I mean, I think
Mm-hmm.
people are always trying to reboot and sequelize and do something with this story. I think if you took the material seriously and just went back to this whole idea of this Texas family that was maybe living high on the hog, no pun intended, or maybe pun intended, but then this development came through and they're like, okay, we have maybe that is what drove them insane, like eating people,
Yep.
kind of like mad person
Yeah.
disease or something. Yeah, just because you could make a horror movie out of that and really explore some cool stuff instead of the tired old, like, oh, he was born evil, or the whole family has always been crazy. That's horror movie stuff, but it's not scary. Like, this is scary because we're still at the point where there's some mystery to, like, what is the deal with these people, really?
Well, that being said, I'll put a caveat on that. The whole family psychopathy thing,
Mm-hmm.
that is from the newer
Right.
chainsaws.
Yeah.
Right.
This one is strictly okay. Their jobs dried up, their money dried up, their food dried up. Here we are, and to that point, knowing about the meat industry and things like that, I haven't delved into like the books and things about Texas Chainsaw Massacre yet. They're sitting on my shelf on my to read pile. But I wonder if that was something that was going to be explored. Like, why are they like this? Did they eat a sick person?
Ooh.
That could be. I mean, it's interesting because they've got Grandpa, who is barely alive. He's zombie-esque. They've been keeping him alive with human blood, apparently, kind of that impression of vampirism. But again, this is where the limited budget works, and where, pardon my get off the lawn moment. I really am sorry for this, folks, but where the later versions, though I did enjoy the remake with Elba, I will say it was done well, but I think limited budget means limited story, which leaves a lot more to your imagination, to where they don't do any implication that, oh, Grandpa's some supernatural fucking bullshit. No, he's just a guy that they've managed to keep alive. And, well, how? Well, he's been sucking on human blood. They've been giving him human peeps, and maybe that's why he hasn't completely died yet, or he's just a stubborn old coot. Grandma passed away long ago because she's almost head cheese at that point.
Like a cicada.
And their pet dog really was a long time ago, that poor thing.
But yeah, Grandpa, I mean, he might as well just be dead because he barely comes alive to, suck on those fingers and nothing really registers. They're having to put the hammer into his hand and lift his arm up, and it just like keeps falling into the bucket.
Yeah. They have to help him, and in fact, it's because of that that gives Sally the opportunity to escape. Um, which was really interesting. I mean, we've seen all the iconic scenes in that, but after she busts through the window and you get her into daylight, you see just how much of a mess she's actually, in and covered in blood. Just how much she's really gone through the ringer, and she's not done. One of the things that always disturbed me about that final run is that our hitchhiker can run faster than her, and he catches up to her. And again, a limited budget. You can only shoot so much because he's shooting this on film, so you can't do multiple shots of close up of what he's doing or whatnot. But in the distance, when you see him running, you see him grab her shirt, which has been ripped open already once from jumping through the window once, and he's got that straight razor, again, foreshadowing from when we saw it way back at the beginning of the movie, and that straight razor comes out a number of times. He's slicing at her back like
He's flaying her.
He's just, and you're like, and you don't realize it right away during the chase until when they get closer to the road, and then you look at what he's doing, you're like, holy shit.
Well, when he swings and then you kind of see her arch her back and scream, right then and there, even though we're not seeing it, I think we only see like one swipe that he takes.
Yeah.
Maybe. But you know what he's doing, and it's just like, run, girl, run. Run.
And then he gets his just desserts to, once again, shout out to Astro Radio Z, Mr. Derek Carey, for Shitty Dummy, because we get a shitty dummy run over beautifully by a truck.
And we get the best freeze frame expression. And
it just blam. Just like, you're like, yeah, all right.
But we'll see him again very soon.
We do. Well, that's because, and that'll be a discussion for next week. TCM2 is a different beast entirely. And yeah, we've talked about, hinted at the sequels. They've tried to capture what you have here, but I think it falls back to, and this isn't necessarily getting off my lawnmower, it's just the way the films are made today. Part of yes, they were disturbing, but when you get Day of the Woman, aka I Spit on Your Grave, you get Last House on the Left, you get The Hills Have Eyes, the original, you get the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that era of just disturbing, fucked up movies. A lot of those, I think part of the reason they're even more disturbing is because what they could get away with filmmaking back then and the limited budget they were shooting on. Because nowadays you have a lot more safety in. Now, I haven't seen the other remakes of I Spit on Your Grave, the other sequels. I heard the second one was better. But when I watched the first one, I'm like, they tried, but I'm like, there's not a way that you make films today legally that you could really make them like they did back then. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I think that's what adds that extra level of disturbing quality, because I don't know how you guys feel.
It also takes away from the heart of it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
The original I Spit on Your Grave was made because Mayor Zarchi found a rape victim walking down the street and took her to the police and watched her, bloodied, bruised, having to go through all this crap. With the remake, there's a lot of problems with the remake.
Yeah, and the remake makes you more scared of the sheriff than of anybody, and it's like it's not what you really wanted. Just toss out quick before you go in. Start up. Cannibal Holocaust would probably be closest to TCM. Yeah, I could see that. Very realistic, low budget. That has its own issues, real animal killing. But
we found that. No, you did not.
Yeah. You did. No, you didn't. What were you going to say, Ian?
I was going to say, why even remake I Spit on Your Grave? It's strictly a branding kind of an exercise. It's this shocking movie from the 70s, and we can do an updated version or whatever. I haven't seen the remake, or you said there's a sequel to the remake.
There are
My
two
God.
sequels.
Two sequels. What the hell? This is not something. And here's my get off the lawn, conservative soapbox moment. We don't need to be highlighting rape revenge fantasies from the 70s and rebranding, repackaging them. But the thing about Texas Chainsaw Massacre is, I don't think this would have been a franchise without the Leatherface mask.
Yeah.
If you think about it, if it was just a guy, if he had just been, I think we're meant to believe that Leatherface has some mental issues.
He does, yeah.
Not necessarily that he's crazy, but that he might have some kind of a disability or something. And I think if he had just been some big overweight dude prancing around with a chainsaw, it would have been disturbing, but it wouldn't have been an icon. It would have been more like the hillbillies from Deliverance or something like that. The hillbillies from Deliverance had leather masks while they were, raping Ned Beatty, rest in peace. We might be seeing Deliverance, the next generation.
Don't
God
give
forbid.
them any ideas.
I'm sorry, I won't.
Way to go putting that on the internet now, Ian. Thanks. Now someone's going to make that film now.
But my point is, and if they do, I'll take full responsibility. My point is, I don't think Leatherface should be a horror icon. He's not Freddy Krueger. He's not Jason Voorhees. He's not, even Norman Bates. I'm going back to the Todd McFarlane, toys from the late 90s, which are great toys and everything. But I've always felt that Leatherface was kind of out of place in this pantheon. He's got a great look, but he's not a monster in the traditional sense. He's not evil.
There's nothing. Yeah, he has issues that needed to be addressed that never were because of whatever life he came from. And you're right. I think if it was just some big guy doing the killing, it's that portrayal that we get of Leatherface, that there is something wrong. But since he wears the mask of human skin, we never see who actually is underneath the mask. But we do get tidbits here and there. We get, pardon me for saying this, but we get I call it the John Waters divine moment. Angelique knows what I'm talking about. Where it's when she's in there, and Leatherface has the woman mask on, and he's actually dressed in a dress. He cross-dressed,
talking in a high voice.
It sounds horrible, but there's the one part right in the beginning in the hallway. He sounds a little bit like divine. I'm like, it just sounds like, I mean, so
Leatherface is a genderqueer icon. I'll say it now.
He is, and the thing is, again, with the way it's shot in here, it's something that you have to pay attention to, because it's not like we get a deliberate full shot of like we would get nowadays, a full screen shot of him dressed as a female with the female mask and all that. Unless you're paying attention to everything going on, because there's a lot going on in some of these scenes, you don't even realize, oh wait, he's got a different mask on. He's wearing a dress. Oh wait, he's got make. But if you don't notice that, it's not exactly waved in front of the camera either. That you would get nowadays, just because of the style of filmmaking. And that's what I think adds to why I like the film, is because there's a lot of things in here that are just presented to the audience. They're not really waved specifically in front of you, and you've got to use your own imagination. And let me tell you, that makes things a lot worse.
Oh yeah, because it is, in a lot of ways, it's a very subjective movie. You have to watch this a few times. Like, I didn't even notice that lamp, the human headlamp above the dinner table, the first time, or maybe even half dozen times I watched it, because you realize this is sort of the experience of the people who are, discovering this family for the first time. Sally's not sitting there like, oh look, there's a head up there. No, she's like constantly looking for an escape, or pleading for her life. She doesn't have time to take in the scenery and the art direction. Yeah.
Wow, I've loved you done with the place. I tell you, that Mel over there is a wonderful wonderful sculpture. I love how you have his arms coming out of his head.
It
That's
really ties the
amazing.
room together.
I can't remember if it's this one or the next one, but there's like a literal armchair.
This one,
This
yeah,
one?
that's in
Was
this
it?
one.
That's the
Okay.
one that Sally's tied to.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's the one
yeah.
that she's tied to, and you don't realize it at first. You're wondering, wait, is she being tied on someone? No, it's an armchair, which I wanted to bring up to you guys. He does work dark humor into this film. And again, it's not exactly slapping you in the face, but it's just stuff that happens that you suddenly find yourself kind of snicker. And then you realize this is some disturbing shit that happens. But yeah, she's being tied to a chair that has a human arm on it. And you're like, oh, that's an armchair. Oh, wait, never mind.
Well, because it's that kind of subjectivity. You can imagine someone going around the bend if they decide to start eating people, and what does that do? And they're like, oh, we can make art out of the bones. Hey, armchair.
Use
That's always been a
every
funny
part.
expression, right? Yes, nothing gets thrown away.
Well, and in all honesty, I'm going to say it right now. I'm slow. I must be a shallow puddle because for the first time watching this film, the opening always kind of got me with the photos and the bodies laying, and then we get the sculpture. You know, the wonderful scene, opening scene. I mean, that's just a wonderful way to open it. But and before that, you get no sound. You just hear the digging of the shovels. And I'm like, when you see the photos with that wonderful, disturbing sound effect, I'm like, oh, are those crime scene? That's got to be a crime scene camera taking the picture.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, tells you how slow. I've watched this film a lot of times, but that was the one part of this film that I for whatever reason, I never made the connection till now that no, that was the hitchhiker. That was him taking pictures with his Polaroid camera before he made his sculpture.
He's an artiste.
He's an artiste, and he's got a lot of art in that house. We don't see all of it up close, but you know, I personally want the skeleton lamp that was next to Sally's armchair that's got the light bulb inside the chest cavity that lights up you know. He had some creative pieces. I'm sorry. Okay, yes, it sounds sick, but I'm like, it makes you wonder if he would have had a different outlet. You know, he's an artist, and I'm like, why am I like humanizing this batshit crazy fucker? I'm like, but he's an art. He's got talent. His medium needs to change.
So if the hitchhiker had an art show, would he call it "Nothing to Lose, Everything to Gain"?
No pain, no gain.
Yeah,
Nope.
there you go. There's a freaking Plainfield tourism T-shirt.
No, no, no.
Yes.
No, they don't talk about Geen to this day in town.
And
by
you
the
could
way.
have a well, I'm making the T-shirt because it's gonna be a barbell made out of femurs and two heads as weights.
I go like so. How I mentioned earlier, where I was reading this true crime book and the story of Ed Gein, I was reading it while we were on our annual family trip that my mother and I took, where for a week we'd go camping around Wisconsin, and then the final night we'd stay at a hotel. But we would drive through areas of central Wisconsin because she had a lot of family here. So I'm reading the book, and we decide to go into Plainfield. I kid you not, while I'm reading the book, on the little one of those little light up signs next to the county fair, grounds, it said Bean Festival. And I went, "Hey mom, look, there's doing a Bean Festival." And she's like, "Shut up. Shut up. You don't say that around here." I mean, the window, we were in our car, but I'm like, "It's Geen Fest. They're having a Geen." Which then my mind went off about, wearing masks and, hurry, step right up. Knock the skulls off to get a prize. But, Leatherface, you mentioned back to him being an icon, and probably not. Again, it goes back to that skin face that actually happened. So then you have this guy who's not just a big guy who kills people. He's got this mask on, which happened in real life, and you even spin it in the beginning with John Larroquette saying, based off of real events that happened. I mean, that whole setup, especially when I was talking to my oldest son in 74, I explained to him, like, there was a lot less information that was at your fingertips that you have now. So just like Blair Witch kind of approach, I'm like, you present a movie saying this is based off of real fact. They can't just go on their Google on their phone while they're watching the movie going,
Say
Texas,
nuh-uh.
and go,
You're right.
no, this didn't happen. And I'm like, and so that added to what I think grew was, holy crap. And with its rough look, I mean, I'm trying to picture myself back in 74 going to the one screen theater to watch this and watching this going, whoa, and knowing Ed Gein, people are out there that actually do this. It's like just all those elements come together in a wonderful formula, I think, for this film.
As far as that reputation goes, I wonder if the gore and the violent reputation sort of grew out of those early days when you could only watch this like at a drive-in or at a movie theater. You couldn't run home and replay it, on your computer and scrub through the scenes. So you were left with, you probably only saw it once, unless you were like a horror fiend. So you saw it once in the theater to see what it's all about. Chances are when the really disturbing stuff happened, you're looking away. So you assume that there's blood splatter and gore and bones hang out and everything. But then, later on you find out, no, it's just, that was it. So your imagination plus your squeamishness filled in something that just was not there in the first place.
Right. And so, I explained it to him and he's like, oh yeah, I can see that, because I'm like, yeah, it's just like Blair Witch. Imagine if Blair Witch came out in like 1979 or 80, where, you had the fake documentary and then you have this. Holy crap, people would be
Oh, they'd lose their minds.
They
Oh
would.
yeah.
So
And
yeah,
we almost did. I mean,
and we in the 90s, you still had, you had to use web crawler and make sure you go to that text only website so it would load on your computer faster. But that, I digress.
memories.
Hashtag release the butthole cut. Anyway,
That's the only cut I want to see.
That's the only cut I want to see. But speaking of cut, we have to mention the late, fantastic performance who went through hell behind scenes, which we found out years later in documentaries, who played Sally, Marilyn Oh my God, her performance in here. I did a feature when she passed away, a short, saying that I think, and you guys, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I think her performance helps elevate how disturbing and the scariness of this film is through her performance.
No doubt.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's not just like a scream queen type of performance. As I watch this movie more as an adult, to get beyond just like, oh, when are they going to get to the killing? You really spend more time with these characters, and for as annoying as Franklin, the younger or older the brother was,
yeah,
you really see her straining through this relationship, and you see her as like a real person whose life, and they kind of go through John Larroquette's narration gets to this in the beginning, that their life was kind of interrupted and irrevocably changed by this chance encounter with these maniacs, but you get a sense of a full person that you're watching instead of just someone who's like in a horror movie, which I think adds to the trauma that we all experience with her and in those last 20 minutes.
I mean, we're literally watching her go insane from what she's being put through. The close-ups on her eyes, there's nothing but pain and madness in those eyes.
And the blood vessels, like that. Yeah. Oh, it hurts.
Robbed. That was Oscar worthy. Seriously, who else could do that? Thinking to yourself, oh well, this is a movie. I'm acting. No, there was no acting there. No. She was literally going insane.
Yeah, and it did traumatize, unfortunately, the actress for many years.
Yeah.
Afterwards, unfortunately, because also we get the stories later about the really kind of rancid conditions of the final dinner scene with the entrails and that, and how it actually smelled and all of that. but her performance, yeah. I mean, people say, "Oh, horror films." I'm like, depending on the horror film, you get some very solid performances. And in my little feature I did after she passed away, I'm like, this film I don't think quite gets to the level that it's at without her,
Mm.
because you get that scene in the dinner scene to where they're just being crazy guys and they're laughing and they're being annoying, and she's screaming and want to get out, and then Hooper just represents her break, like where she actually finally breaks, and he does all those quick cuts where she's looking around and her eyes are and she's just got this pure look of fear on her face, and it's just like, holy shit, this is just some next level type of thing, and you're just like, you're with her, and you're just, it's insane cuts, and everything that he does for that setup, and it's her performance, I think, that elevates it really to just a little bit of that extra oomph for this film that could have faded into obscurity. I mean, like you said, no Leatherface. Figure if you had no Leatherface. Figure if you didn't quite have the characters you did, but especially your performance. I mean, okay, But
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I think this movie still would have had its reputation. I just don't think it would have been sequelized to the degree that it is now, because you don't have that icon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. That's true.
It's kind of like Friday the 13th really didn't become Friday the 13th until Jason got that hockey mask in 3, and now that's what people kind of associate it with.
Well, and we'll have this discussion if it gets chosen. I'm not saying it yet. I'll be announcing it at the AMA what our theme is going to be for next year. But Freddy, if you actually watch the first Nightmare on Elm Street, it's a low budget horror film. You watch it. Freddy doesn't have the voice you expect. The production value is just a bit above Texas Chainsaw. I know, blasphemy, but it's true. I mean, the budget, they're working in a limited budget, and he doesn't become that icon that everybody knows and worked into pop culture till 3.
I gotta say, and we don't have to get into the whole thing now. So,
No.
but yeah, so please, when that voting happens, you know what to do, folks. But no, the iconography, I think, was solidified in 2, because I remember, again, going back to the video store and seeing the great Robert Englund, the kind of tipping up the hat with the knife finger. But he was a different character in 2 than he was in 3. 3 solidified, this is the jokey but scary Freddy.
Right.
And that held on for about 2 movies, and then he was just, he's the funny guy now. But yeah, there was some really great, weird stuff going on in that 3rd movie. So yeah, that maybe that'd be something to explore, is the second sequels, 3rd movies on these mega franchises. What's going on in them?
We actually did that a few years ago. It was the 3rd time's a charm, where we looked at.
Oh, well, I gotta go watch those. My mistake.
No, it's okay.
I think Freddy was the Fresh Prince Nightmare on My Street.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I've got that song. The Nightmare on My Street, which they got in trouble for, but that's a whole nother story. But yeah, I mean, Leatherface, you're right. That character helped put it into a franchise rather than being a one-off, kind of like The Burning is just a one-off horror slasher film, but it's very similar to others, but that you had an iconic character. And we've had
George Costanza?
Fisher Stevens.
No. There you go. We've had that discussion before, though, too, with like Army of Darkness. Everybody loves Ash. I'm like, well, which one? You talking about Army of Darkness, Ash, Evil Dead 2, or Evil Dead, which Ash are you talking about? Because the Ash in Evil Dead 1 and even in Evil Dead 2 is far different than the Ash in Army of Darkness.
Yeah.
And everybody loves the Ash in Army of Darkness, and then they go back and watch 1 and they go, where's the ha-ha? At least I've never gotten that with Texas Chainsaw, though maybe a little bit with Next Generation. And I'm debating, Mr. Shearer would like to talk about Texas Chainsaw Next Generation, which is one that's rough for me to revisit. So I'm weighing in on if that's going to be a Patreon episode. Possibly, we'll have to see. But I think we'll wrap it up here. Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I see why it's a classic, and I still recommend it. Angelique, what about you?
Oh, absolutely, hands down,
Mm.
no question. I've got the poster tattooed on my back. I mean, let's be real.
Hey, do I want to know where the chainsaw blade goes? Never mind.
Up my shoulder blade into my neck. Thank you.
Oh, there you go. Okay. It goes that direction. Okay. Oh, that's
Yes.
good. Okay. It goes that
Chains up.
direction. Mr. Ian Simmons, what about you? Recommend this still, even though it's 47 years old?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is it stands the test of time. I think anybody who's turned off by it by either the stories they've heard about how violent it is, turned off by the fact that they've made a whole bunch of like terrible sequels. I mean, this is one of the we've kind of talked about this before. The dangers of remakes, bad sequels is if you are of the younger generation that came long after the originals came out and you just like, oh, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I'll put this in. There's a new one that came out. You're like, this is terrible. Why would anyone want to watch more of these? And you don't watch the original, you're just being robbed of it, which I think is, one of the accomplices in that crime are the studios that put this junk out there. So yeah, definitely this is a great, legitimately great, harrowing film. And I can say there's a case for the second one, which we'll talk about next week. That's equally is it's almost like Alien and Aliens, both great but
exactly.
both
Yeah.
very different.
Very different films. And I will say as well, as we had with our discussion when we did the 8 weeks of Hitchcock, and that I know many people out there don't want to look back at these older films and go, well, we've seen this before. And I'm like, yeah, but go into it realizing the first time this showed was the first time this happened. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of those to where watch it kind of with that mindset of, wow, this was the first time some of the stuff that was being done was ever committed to celluloid and put on a big screen in front of large audiences. So, and you can see how many filmmakers after it were influenced by this. Just like when we did Hitchcock. If you watch a Hitchcock film, especially a couple, you will see so many Academy Award winning modern filmmakers who directly ripped off or borrowed or copied the style of Hitchcock and how he did things because, and that's why we love talking, and that's why I at least love talking about films like this and exploring them, because you look at it going, wow, they did this back then.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's going long, but King Kong, 1930. Look at what they do in King Kong, and some of those core things that they did for that back then, they're still doing in a different form, but it's still basically the same.
Right.
Yeah, I just watched for the first time King Kong 76 this week. And there's a lot of cool stuff going on there. And like the first half hour of that movie, one of the complaints of the modern Kong Godzilla movies is they spend too much time with uninteresting characters. King Kong 76, they're spending all this time with amazing characters. Like, I just want, it's a shame. I want to visit the alternate reality where Charles Grodin, Jeff Bridges, and Jessica Lange are just like in these comedy screwball trio movies. Apes or not, they're just so great together.
Yeah. So there you have it, folks. Visit the classics. You might be surprised by some of them. Like I said, King Kong, they used rear projection and guys walking in front of them. You know what the modern version of it is how they shot Mandalorian, where they have LCD screens with the projected images. Literally, it's the same concept for 100 years almost they've been using for special effects. So that's why you should, I think, at least revisit the classics and realize where some of these things came from. And now we'll shut up because, again, this is one of our favorite movies and I could definitely talk more about it. But we will bring things to a close tonight. And this, as always, is where I give my wonderful patient crew members the license to shill. So, Angelique, ladies first, please, license to shill.
Follow me on Instagram at hostess_with_the_ghostess. So hostess with the ghostess. We've got a lot of things coming up. Of course, so much going on at monstersmadnessandmagic.com. I will also have my first print article coming out soon. in a new magazine called Monster Movie Land.
Nice.
This fall, that'll be coming out. Thanks. I'm so happy.
Cool.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah. And I've got a couple other contributor things coming down the line that will be announced, on my Instagram and my Facebook, of course. So yeah.
Awesome. Fantastic stuff. Check that out. The hostess, the ghostess with the hostess? What?
Hostess with the ghostess.
Hostess with the ghostess. I I have a broken brain, folks. I apologize. Anyway, yeah, check out Angelique's stuff. And Mr. Ian Simmons, the floor is now yours, sir.
Well, I'm Ian Simmons. I run Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com. I also have a YouTube channel. Just look up Kicking the Seat on YouTube. I do filmmaker interviews, critic roundtables, movie reviews, that kind of stuff several times a week. And including on Wednesday nights, we do a live, usually if there's a Disney Plus Marvel show out, we'll do a weekly recap. And Mark has been gracious enough to hang out and join us for a couple of series now. Right now we're doing Loki. We're wrapping that up in the next couple of weeks. So a lot of fun. Come check it out. Hang out live 9 p.m. Central on Wednesdays. Oh, and this coming Sunday, because I think this will be up by then.
Yeah, it will.
Oh my gosh, I forgot. I think it's 8:30, if I have that right. Yeah, 8:30 p.m. Central. We'll be talking about Black Widow live. It'll be a live stream about Black Widow. So all of our reactions. And then, Mark, I hope you're going to plug what's happening on Friday with you and your channel.
Right.
Yes, it's part of the reason why I kind of embellished for this month and doing the multicasting and everything. 15 years on YouTube this Friday. It's also my birthday, and it's the first video I ever posted on YouTube was July 9th, 2006. So it is the 15th
Yay.
anniversary. This is anniversary week. If you haven't caught it onto YouTube, we've got some special reviews. These two fine folks were happy enough to be on those extended Final Cut episodes. Plus, we got a few other familiar voices and faces to go along with that, all counting down to our AMA, 7 o'clock Central Time on the YouTube channel. And who knows, maybe more, because I can trying out this multicast thing. But it's an AMA, 7 o'clock. I'm not sure exactly everything I'm going to do or what I'm going to cover, but people can pop in and out. We could talk about videos and anything else about my journey onto YouTube's. If anyone at all is interested, and how it's changed over 15 years. So that's happening then, folks. I thank you all for your support and patience and everything. We appreciate our listeners, who we've grown quite a bit doing this. And so we thank you all. And now I think we'll just say a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Night.